Introduction to Lyrical Ballads, 1798. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Verity Kendall. Lyrical Ballads, 1798, by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. Advertisement. It is the honourable characteristic of poetry that its materials are to be found in every subject which can interest the human mind. The evidence of this fact is to be sought not in the writings of critics, but in those of poets themselves. The majority of the following poems are to be considered as experiments. They were written chiefly with a view to ascertain how far the language of conversation in the middle and lower classes of society is adapted to the purposes of poetic pleasure. Readers accustomed to the gaudiness and inane phraseology of many modern writers, if they persist in reading this book to its conclusion, will perhaps frequently have to struggle with feelings of strangeness and awkwardness. They will look round for poetry, and will be induced to inquire by what species of courtesy these attempts can be permitted to assume that title. It is desirable that such readers, for their own sakes, should not suffer the solitary word poetry, a word of very disputed meaning, to stand in the way of their gratification, but that, while they are perusing this book, they should ask themselves if it contains a natural delineation of human passions, human characters, and human incidents, and if the answer be favourable to the author's wishes, that they should consent to be pleased in spite of that most dreadful enemy to our pleasures, our own pre-established codes of decision. Readers of superior judgment may disapprove of the style in which many of these pieces are executed. It must be expected that many lines and phrases will not exactly suit their taste. It will perhaps appear to them that, wishing to avoid the prevalent fault of the day, the author has sometimes descended too low, and that many of his expressions are too familiar and not of sufficient dignity. It is apprehended that the more conversant the reader is with our elder writers, and with those in modern times who have been the most successful in painting manners and passions, the fewer complaints of this kind will he have to make. An accurate taste in poetry, and in all the other arts, Sir Joshua Reynolds has observed, is an acquired talent, which can only be produced by severe thought, and a long continued intercourse with the best models of composition. This is mentioned not with so ridiculous a purpose as to prevent the most inexperienced reader from judging for himself, but merely to temper the rashness of decision, and to suggest that, if poetry be a subject on which much time has not been bestowed, the judgment may be erroneous, and that in many cases it necessarily will be so. The tale of Goody Blake and Harry Gill is founded on a well-authenticated fact which happened in Warwickshire. Of the other poems in this collection, it may be proper to say that they are either absolute inventions of the author, or facts which took place within his personal observation or that of his friends. The poem of the Thorn, as the reader will soon discover, is not supposed to be spoken in the author's own person. The character of the loquacious narrator will sufficiently shew itself in the course of the story. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner was professedly written in imitation of the style as well as of the spirit of the elder poets, but with a few exceptions, the author believes that the language adopted in it has been equally intelligible for these 3 last centuries. The lines entitled Expulsion and Reply, and those which follow, arose out of conversation with a friend who was somewhat unreasonably attached to modern books of moral philosophy. End of advertisement. Recording by Verity Kendall. Chapter 1 of Lyrical Ballads, 1798. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Verity Kendall. Lyrical Ballads, 1798, by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. Chapter 1. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in 7 parts. Arguments. How a ship having passed the line was driven by storms to the cold country towards the South Pole, and how from thence she made her course to the tropical latitude of the great Pacific Ocean, and of the strange things that befell, and in what manner the ancient mariner came back to his own country. Part 1. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of 3. By thy long grey beard and thy glittering eye, now wherefore stoppeth me? The bridegroom's doors are opened wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set, mayst hear the merry din. But still he holds the wedding guest. There was a ship, quoth he. Nay, if thou'st got a laughsome tale, mariner, come with me. He holds him with his skinny hand. Quoth he, there was a ship. Now get thee hence, thou greybeard loon, or my staff shall make thee skip. He holds him with his glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still. and listens like a 3 years' child. The mariner hath his will. The wedding guest sate on a stone, he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared, merrily did we drop, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left, out of the sea came he, and he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. Higher and higher every day, till over the mast at noon, the wedding guest here beat his breast, for he heard the loud bassoon. The bride hath paced into the hall, red as a rose is she, nodding their heads before her goes the merry minstrelsy. The wedding guest he beat his breast, yet he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. Listen, stranger, storm and wind, a wind and tempest strong, for days and weeks it played us freaks, like chaff we drove along. Listen, stranger, mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold, and ice mast high came floating by, as green as emerald, and thro' the drifts of snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen. Ne shapes of men, ne beasts we ken, and ice was all between. The ice was here, the ice was there, and the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like noises of a swound. At length did cross an albatross, through the fog it came, and an it were a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. The mariners gave it biscuit worms, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit, and helmsmen steered us through. And good south wind sprung up behind, the albatross did follow, and every day for food or play came to the mariners' hollow. In mist or cloud, on mast or shroud, it perched for vespers 9, whiles all the night thro' fog smoke white glimmered the white moonshine. God save the ancient mariner from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. Part II. The sun came up upon the right, out of the sea came he, and broad as a weft upon the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow, ne any day for food nor play came to the mariner's hollow. And I had done an hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe, for all averred I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ne dim ne red, like God's own head, the glorious sun uprist. Then all averred I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay, that bring the fog and mist. The breezes blew, the white foam flew, the furrow flowed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down, 'twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All in a hot and coppery sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand, no bigger than the moon. Day after day, we stuck, ne breath, ne motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, ne any drop to drink. The very deeps did rot, O Christ, that ever this should be. Yea, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. About in reel and rout, the death fires danced at night. The water like a witch's oils burnt green and blue and white. And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak no more than if we had been choked with soot. Ah, well a day, what evil looks had I come from old and young! Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. Part III. I saw a something in the sky, no bigger than my fist. At first it seemed a little speck, and then it seemed a mist. It moved and took at last a certain shape I wist. A speck, a mist, a shape I wist, and still it ne'rd and ne'rd. And an it dodged a water sprite, it plunged and tacked and veered. With throat unslacked, with black lips back, ne could we laugh ne wail. Then while through drought all dumb they stood, I bit my arm and sucked the blood, and cried, "A sail! A sail!" With throat unslacked, with black lips backed, agape they heard me call. Gramercy they for joy did grin, and all at once their breath drew in, as they were drinking all. She doth not tack from side to side, hither to work us wheel. Withouten wind, withouten tide, she steadies with upright keel. The western wave was all aflame, the day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad bright sun, when the strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. And straight the sun was flecked with bars, Heaven's mother send us grace, as if through a dungeon grate he peered with broad and burning face. Alas, thought I, my heart beat loud, how far does she nears and nears? Are those her sails that glance in the sun, like restless gossameres? Are these her naked ribs, which flecked, the sun did behind them peer? And are these two all the crew, that woman and her fleshless sphere? His bones were black with many a crack, all black and bare, I ween, jet black and bare, save where with rust Of mouldy damps and charnel crust They patched with purple and green. Her lips are red, her looks are free, her locks are yellow as gold, her skin is as white as leprosy, and she is far liker death than he. Her flesh makes the still air cold. The naked hulk alongside came, and the twain were playing dice. The game is done, I've won, I've won, quoth she, and whistled thrice. A gust of wind stirred up behind, and whistled through his bones, through the holes of his eyes and the hole of his mouth, half whistles and half groans. With never a whisper in the sea, off darts the spectre ship, while clomb above the eastern bar the horned moon with one bright star, almost atween the tips. One after one by the horned moon, listen, O stranger, to me, each turned his face with a ghastly pang, and cursed me with his ee. 4 times 50 living men, with never a sigh or groan, with heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. Their souls did from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow. Part IV. I fear thee, ancient mariner, I fear thy skinny hand, and thou art long and lank and brown as is the ribbed sea sand. I fear thee and thy glittering eye, and thy skinny hand so brown. Fear not, thou wedding gift, this body dropped not down. Alone, alone, all alone, alone on the wide sea, and Christ would take no pity on my soul in agony. The many men so beautiful, and they all dead did lie, and million slimy things lived on, and so did I. I looked upon the rotting sea, and drew my eyes away. I looked upon the eldritch deck, and there the dead men lay. I looked to heaven and tried to pray, but or ever a prayer had gushed, a wicked whisper came and made my heart as dry as dust. I closed my lids and kept them closed, till the balls like pulses beat, for the sky and the sea, and the sea and the sky, lay like a load on my weary eye, and the dead were at my feet. The cold sweat melted from their limbs, ne rot, ne reek did they, the look with which they looked on me had never passed away. An orphan's curse would drag to hell a spirit from on high, but oh, more terrible than that is the curse in a dead man's eye. 7 days, 7 nights I saw that curse, and yet I could not die. The moving moon went up the sky, and nowhere did abide. Softly she was going up, and a star or two beside. Her beams bemocked the sultry main, like morning frosts ye spread, and where the ship's huge shadow lay, the charmed water burnt alway, a still and awful red. Beyond the shadow of the ship I watched the water snakes, they moved in tracks of shining white, and when they reared, the elfish light fell off in hoary flakes. Within the shadow of the ships I watched their rich attire, blue and glossy green and velvet black, they coiled and swam, and every track was a flash of golden fire. O happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure my kind saints took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. The selfsame moment I could pray, and from my neck so free, the albatross fell off and sank like lead into the sea. Part V. O sleep, it is a gentle thing, beloved from pole to pole. To Mary Queen the praise be Yevon, she sent the gentle sleep from heaven, that slid into my soul. The silly buckets on the deck, that had so long remained, I dreamt that they were filled with dew, and when I awoke it rained. My lips were wet, my throat was cold, my garments were all dank. Sure I had drunken in my dreams, and still my body drank. I moved and could not feel my limbs, I was so light almost. I thought that I had died in sleep, and was a blessed ghost. The roaring wind it roared far off, it did not come anear, but with its sound it shook the sails that were so thin and sere. The upper air bursts into life, and 100 fireflags sheen. To and fro they hurried about, and to and fro and in and out the stars danced on between. The coming wind doth roar more loud, the sails do sigh like sedge. The rain pours down from one black cloud, and the moon is at its edge. Hark, hark, the thick black cloud is cleft, and the moon is at its side. Like waters shone from some high crag, and the lightning falls with never a jag, a river steep and wide. The strong wind reached the ship, it roared and dropped down like a stone. Beneath the lightning and the moon, the dead men gave a groan. They groaned, they stirred, they all uprose, ne spake, ne moved their eyes. It had been strange, even in a dream, to have seen those dead men rise. The helmsman steered, the ship moved on, yet never a breeze up blew. The mariners all 'gan work the rope where they were wont to do. They raised their limbs like lifeless tools, we were a ghastly crew. The body of my brother's son stood by me knee to knee. The body and I pulled at one rope, but he said naught to me, and I quaked to think of my own voice, how frightful it would be. The daylight dawned, they dropped their arms, and clustered round the mast. Sweet sounds rose slowly through their mouths, and from their bodies passed. Around flew each sweet sound, then darted to the sun. Slowly the sounds came back again, now mixed, now one by one. Sometimes a dropping from the sky, I heard the lavrock sing. Sometimes all the little birds that are, how they seemed to fill the sea and air with their sweet jargoning. And now 'twas like all instruments, now like a lonely flute, and now it is an angel's song, that makes the heavens be mute. It ceased, yet still the sails made on, a pleasant noise till noon, a noise like a hidden brook in the leafy month of June, that to the sleeping woods all night singeth a quiet tune. Listen, oh listen, thou wedding guest, Mariner, thou hast thy will, for that which comes out of thine eye doth make my body and soul to be still. Never sadder tale was told to a man of woman born. Sadder and wiser, thou wedding guest, thou'lt rise to-morrow morn. Never sadder tale was heard by man of woman born. The mariners all returned to work as silent as before. The mariners all 'gan pull the ropes, but look at me, they nold. Thought I am as thin as air, they cannot me behold. Till moon we silently sailed on, yet never a breeze did breathe. Slowly and smoothly went the ship, moved onwards from beneath. Under the keel 9 fathom deep, from the land of mist and snow, the Spirit slid, and it was he that made the ship to go. The sails at noon left off their tune, and the ship stood still also. The sun right up above the mast had fixed her to the ocean, but in a minute she 'gan stir with a short uneasy motion. Backwards and forwards half her length with a short uneasy motion. Then, like a pawing horse let go, she made a sudden bound. It flung the blood into my head, and I fell into a swound. How long in that same fit I lay, I have not to declare, but ere my living life returned, I heard, and in my soul discerned, 2 voices in the air. Is it he, quoth one, is this the man, by him who died on the cross? With his full bow he laid full low the harmless albatross. The Spirit who biddeth by himself in the land of mist and snow, he loved the bird that loved the man who shot him with his bow. The other was a softer voice, as soft as honey dew. Quoth he, the man hath penance done, and penance more will do. Part VI. First voice. But tell me, speak again, thy soft response renewing. What makes the ship drive on so fast? What is the ocean doing? Second voice. Still as a slave before his lord, the ocean hath no blast. His great bright eye mostly silently upon the moon is cast. If he may know which way to go, for she guides him smooth or grim. See, brother, see, how graciously she looketh down on him. First voice. But why drives on that ship so fast, without wave or wind? Second voice. The air is cut away before, and closes from behind. Fly, brother, fly, more high, or shall we be delated? For slow and slow that ship will go, when the mariner's trance is abated. I woke, and we were sailing so, as in a gentler weather. 'Twas night, calm night, the moon was high, the dead men stood together. All stood together on the deck for a charnel dungeon fitter. All fixed on me their stony eyes, that in the moon did glitter. The pang, the curse with which they died, had never passed away. I could not draw my een from theirs, ne turn them up to pray. And in its time the spell was snapped, and I could move my een. I looked far forth, but little saw of what might else be seen. Like one that on a lonely road doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned round walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. But soon there breathed a wind on me, ne sound ne motion made. Its path was not upon the sea, in ripple or in shade. It raised my hair, it fanned my cheek, like a meadow gale of spring. It mingled strangely with my fears, yet it felt like a welcoming. Swiftly, swiftly flew the ship, yet she sailed softly on. Sweetly, sweetly blew the breeze, on me alone it blew. O dream of joy, is this indeed a lighthouse top I see? Is this the hill, is this the kirk, is this mine own country? We drifted o'er the harbour bay, and I with sobs did pray, O let me be awake, my God, or let me sleep alway. The harbour bay was clear as glass, so smoothly it was strewn, and on the bay the moonlight lay, and the shadow of the moon. The moon bay was white or lower, till rising from the same, full many shapes that shadows were, like as of torches came. A little distance from the prow, those dark red shadows were, but soon I saw that my own flesh was red as in a glare. I turned my head in fear or dread, and by the Holy Rood, the bodies that had advanced, and now before the mast they stood. They lifted up their stiff right arms, they held them straight and tight. and each right arm burned like a torch that's borne upright. Their stony eyeballs glittered on in the red and smoky light. I prayed and turned my head away, forth looking as fore there were no breezes upon the bay, no wave against the shore. The rock shone bright, the kirk no less, that stands above the rock. The moonlight steeped in silentness the steady weathercock, and the bay was white with silent light, till rising from the same, full many shapes that shadows were in crimson colours came. A little distance from the prow those crimson shadows were. I turned my eyes upon the deck, O Christ, what saw I there? Each corse lay flat, lifeless and flat, and by the holy rood, a man all light, a seraph man, on every corse there stood. This seraph band each waved his hand, it was a heavenly sight. They stood as signals to the land, each one a lovely light. This seraph band each waved his hand, no voice did they impart, no voice, but oh, the silence sank like music on my heart. Eftsones I heard the dash of oars, I heard the pilot's cheer. My head was turned perforce away, and I saw a boat appear. Then vanished all the lovely lights, the bodies rose anew. With silent pace each to his place came back the ghastly crew. The wind that shade nor motion made, on me alone it blew. The pilot and the pilot's boy, I heard them coming fast. Dear Lord in heaven, it was a joy the dead men could not blast. I saw a third, I heard his voice, it is the hermit good. He singeth loud his godly hymns that he makes in the wood. He'll shrieve my soul, he'll wash away the albatross's blood. Part VII. This hermit good lives in the wood, which slopes down to the sea. How loudly his sweet voice he rears! He loves to talk with mariners that come from a far country. He kneels at morn and noon and eve, he hath a cushion plump. It is the moss that wholly hides the rotted old oak stump. The skiff boat neared, I heard them talk, why this is strange, I trow. Where are those lights so many and fair, that signal made but now? Strange by my faith, the hermit said, and they answered not our cheer. The planks that warped, and see those sails, how thin they are and sere. I never saw aught like them, unless perchance it were the skeletons of leaves that lag my forest brook along, when the ivy tod is heavy with snow, and the owlet whoops to the wolf below, that eats the she-wolf's young. Dear Lord, it has a fiendish look, the pilot made reply. I am afeard, push on, said the hermit cheerily. The boat came closer to the ship, but I ne spake ne stirred. The boat came close beneath the ship, and straight a sound was heard. Under the water it rumbled on, still louder and more dread. It reached the ship, it split the bay, the ship went down like lead. Stunned by the loud and dreadful sound, which sky and ocean smote, like one that hath been 7 days drowned, my body lay afloat. But swift as dreams myself I found within the pilot's boat. Upon the whirl where sank the ship, the boat spun round and round, and all was still save the hill was telling of the sound. I moved my lips, the pilot shrieked, and fell down in a fit. The holy hermit raised his eyes, and prayed where he did sit. I took the oars, the pilot's boy, who now doth crazy go, laughed loud and long, and all the while his eyes went to and fro. Ha, ha, quoth he, full plain I see, the devil knows how to row. And now all in my own country, I stood on the firm land. The hermit stepped forth from the boat, and scarcely could he stand. "Oh, shrieve me, holy man!" The hermit crossed his brow. "Say quick," quoth he, "I bid thee say, what manner man art thou?" Forthwith this frame of mine was wretched with woeful agony, which forced me to begin my tale, and then it left me free. Since then at an uncertain hour, now oft times and now fewer, that anguish comes and makes me tell my ghastly aventure. I pass like night from land to land, I have strange power of speech. The moment that his face I see, I know the man that must hear me, to him my tale I teach. What loud uproar bursts from the door, the wedding guests are there, but in the garden bower the bride and the bridesmaids singing are, and hark the little vesper bell, which biddeth me to prayer. O wedding guest, this soul hath been alone on a wide, wide sea, so lonely 'twas that God himself scarce seemed there to be. O sweeter than the marriage feast, 'tis sweeter far to me, to walk together to the kirk with goodly company. To walk together to the kirk, and all together pray, while each to his great Father bends, old men, and babes, and loving friends, and youths, and maidens gay. Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest, he prayeth well who loveth well both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best all things both great and small, for the dear God who loveth, he made and loveth all. The mariner, whose eye is bright, whose beard with age is hoar, is gone, and now the wedding guest turned from the bridegroom's door. He went like one that hath been stunned, and is of sense forlorn. A sadder and a wiser man he rose the morrow morn. End of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Recording by Verity Kendall. Chapter 2 of Lyrical Ballads 1798. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Verity Kendall. Lyrical Ballads 1798 by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. The Foster Mother's Tale, a Dramatic Fragment. Foster Mother. I never saw the man whom you describe. Maria. 'Tis strange, he spake of you familiarly, as mine and Albert's common foster mother. Foster Mother. Now blessings on the man, whoe'er he be, that joined your names with mine. O my sweet lady, as often as I think of those dear times, when you two little ones would stand at eve, on each side of my chair, and make me learn all you had learnt in the day, and how to talk in gentle phrase, then bid me sing to you, 'tis more like heaven to come than what has been. Maria. Oh, my dear mother, this strange man has left me, troubled with wilder fancies than the moon breeds in the love-sick maid who gazes at it, till lost in inward vision with wet eye, she gazes idly. But that entrance, mother! Foster Mother. Can no one hear? It is a perilous tale. Maria. No one. Foster Mother. My husband's father told it me, poor old Leone, angels rest his soul. He was a woodman and could fell and saw with lusty arm. You know that huge round beam which props the hanging wall of the old chapel? Beneath that tree, while yet it was a tree, he found a baby wrapped in mosses lined with thistle beards, and such small locks of wool as hang on brambles. Well, he brought him home, and reared him at the then Lord Velez's cost. And so the babe grew up a pretty boy but most unteachable, and never learnt a prayer, nor told a bead, but knew the names of birds and mocked their notes, and whistled as if he were a bird himself. And all autumn 'twas his only play to get the seeds of wild flowers and to plant them, with earth and water, on the stumps of trees. A friar who gathered simples in the woods, a grey-haired man, he loved this little boy. The boy loved him, and when the friar taught him, he soon could write with the pen, and from that time lived chiefly at the convent or the castle. So he became a very learned youth. But oh, poor wretch! He read and read and read, till his brain turned, and ere his 20th year he had unlawful thoughts of many things, and though he prayed, he never loved to pray with holy men, nor in a holy place. But yet his speech, it was so soft and sweet, the late Lord Velez ne'er was wearied with him. And once, as by the north side of the chapel, they stood together, chained in deep discourse, the earth heaved under them with such a groan, that the wall tottered and had well nigh fallen right on their heads. My lord was sorely frightened. A fever seized him, and he made confession of all the heretical and lawless talk which brought this judgment. So the youth was seized and cast into that hole. My husband's father sobbed like a child. It almost broke his heart. And once, as he was working in the cellar, he heard a voice distinctly. 'Twas the youth's, who sung a doleful song about the green fields. How sweet it were on the lake or wild savannah to hunt for food and be a naked man, and wander up and down at liberty. He always doted on the youth, and now his love grew desperate, and defying death, he made that cunning entrance I described, and the young man escaped. Maria. 'Tis a sweet tale, such as would lull a listening child to sleep. His rosy face besoiled with unwiped tears. And what became of him? Foster Mother. He went on shipboard with those bold voyagers who made discovery of golden lands. Leonie's younger brother went likewise, and when he returned to Spain, he told Leonie that the poor mad youth, soon after they arrived in the New World, in spite of his dissuasion, seized a boat, and all alone set sail by silent moonlight up a great river, great as any sea, and ne'er was heard of more. But 'tis supposed he lived and died among the savage men. End of the Foster Mother's Tale. Recording by Verity Kendall. Chapter 3 of Lyrical Ballads 1798. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Verity Kendall. Lyrical Ballads 1798 by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. Lines left upon a seat in a yew tree, which stands near the lake of Esthwaite, on a desolate part of the shore, yet commanding a beautiful prospect. Nay, traveller, rest! This lonely yew tree stands far from all human dwelling. What if here no sparkling rivulets spread the verdant herb? What if these barren boughs be not love's? Yet, if the wind breathe soft, the curling waves that break against the shore shall lull thy mind, by one soft impulse saved from vacancy. Who he was that piled these stones, and with the mossy sod first covered o'er, and taught this aged tree, now wild, to bend its arms in circling shade, I well remember. He was one who owned no common soul, in youth by genius nursed, and big with lofty views, he to the world went forth, pure in his heart, against the taint of desolate tongues, against jealousy and hate, and scorn, against all enemies prepared, all but neglect, and so, his spirit damped, at once with rash disdain he turned away, and with the food of pride sustained his soul, in solitude. Stranger, these gloomy boughs had charms for him, and here he loved sit, his only visitants a straggling sheep, the stone chat, or the glancing sandpiper, and on these barren rocks, with juniper, and heath, and thistle thinly sprinkled o'er, he fixed his downward eye, he many an hour a morbid pleasure nourished, tracing here an emblem of his own unfruitful life, and lifting up his head, he then would gaze on the more distant scene. How lovely 'tis, thou seest, and he would gaze till it became far lovelier, and his heart could not sustain the beauty still more beauteous, nor that time would he forget those beings to whose minds, warm from the labours of benevolence, the world, and man himself appeared a scene of kindred loveliness. Then he would sigh with mournful joy to think that others felt what he must never feel, and so, lost man, on visionary views would fancy feed, till his eyes streamed with tears. In this deep vale he died, this seat his only monument. If thou be one whose heart the holy forms of young imaginations have kept pure, stranger, henceforth be warned, and know that pride, howe'er disguised in its own majesty, is littleness, that he who feels contempt for any living thing hath faculties which he has never used, that thought with him is in its infancy. The man whose eye is ever on himself doth look on one, the least of nature's works, one who might move the wise man to that scorn which wisdom holds unlawful ever. Oh, be wiser thou! Instructed that true knowledge leads to love, true dignity abides with him alone, who in the silent hour of inward thought can still suspect and still revere himself in lowliness of heart. End of lines left upon a seat in a yew tree which stands near the lake of Esthwaite, on a desolate part of the shore, yet commanding a beautiful prospect. Recording by Verity Kendall. Chapter 4 of Lyrical Ballads, 1798. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Verity Kendall. Lyrical Ballads, 1798, by Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. The Nightingale, a conversational poem written in April 1798. No cloud, no relic of the sunken day distinguishes the west, no long thin slip of sullen light, no obscure trembling hues. Come, we will rest on this old mossy bridge. You see the glimmer of the stream beneath, but hear no murmuring. It flows silently o'er its soft bed of verdure. All is still, a balmy night, and though the stars be dim, yet let us think upon the vernal showers that gladden the green earth, and we shall find a pleasure in the dimness of the stars. And hark! The nightingale begins its song, most musical, most melancholy bird. Footnote 1. Most musical, most melancholy. This passage in Milton possesses an excellence far superior to that of mere description. It is spoken in the character of the melancholy man, and has therefore a dramatic propriety. The author makes this remark to rescue himself from the charge of having alluded with levity to a line in Milton, a charge than which none could be more painful to him, except perhaps that of having ridiculed his Bible. End of footnote. A melancholy bird, oh idle thought! In nature there is nothing melancholy, but some night-wandering man whose heart was pierced with the remembrance of a grievous wrong, or slow distemper or neglected love, and so, poor wretch, filled all these things with himself, and made all gentle sounds tell back the tale of his own sorrows. He, and such as he, first named these notes a melancholy strain, and many a poet echoes the conceit, poet who hath been building up the rhyme, when he had better far have stretched his limbs, beside a brook in a mossy forest dwell, by sun or moonlight to the influxes of shapes and sounds and shifting elements, surrendering his whole spirit of his song and of his fame forgetful, so his fame should share in nature's immortality, a venerable thing, and so his song should make all nature lovelier and itself be loved like nature. But 'twill not be so, and youths and maidens most poetical, who lose the deepening twilights of spring, in ballrooms and hot theatres they still, full of meek sympathy, must heave their sighs over Philomella's pity-pleading strange. My friend, and my friend's sister, we have learnt a different law. We must not thus profane Nature's sweet voices always full of love and joyance. 'Tis the merry nightingale that crowds and hurries and precipitates with fast, thick warble his delicious notes, as he were fearful that an April night would be too short for him to utter forth his love chant and disburthen his full soul of all its music. And I know a grove of large extent, hard by a castle huge, which the great lord inhabits not, and so this grove is wild with tangling underwood, and the trim walks are broken up, and grass, thin grass, and kingcups grow within the paths, and never elsewhere in one place I knew so many nightingales. And far and near, in wood and thicket o'er the wide grove, they answer and provoke each other's songs, with skirmish and capricious passagings, and murmurs musical, and swift jug-jug, and one low piping sound more sweet than all, stirring the air with such a harmony, that should you close your eyes, you might almost forget it was not day. On moonlight bushes, whose dewy leaflets are but half disclosed, you may perchance behold them on the twigs, their bright eyes both bright and full, glistening, while many a glow worm in the shade lights up her love torch. A most gentle maid, who dwelleth in her hospitable home, hard by the castle, and at latest eve, even like a lady vowed and dedicate to something more than nature in the grove, glides through the pathways. She knows all their notes, that gentle maid, and oft a moment's space, what time the moon was lost behind a cloud, hath heard a pause of silence, till the moon, emerging, hath awakened earth and sky with one sensation, and those wakeful birds have all burst forth in choral minstrelsy, as if one quick and sudden gale had swept 100 airy harps. And she hath watched many a nightingale perch giddily on a blossomy twig still swinging from the breeze, and to the motion tune his wanton song like tipsy joy that reels with tossing head. Farewell, O warbler, till tomorrow eve, and you, my friends, farewell, a short farewell. We have been loitering long and pleasantly, and now for our dear homes. That strain again! Full fain it would delay me. My dear babe, who capable of no articulate sound, mars all things with his imitative lips. How he would place his hand beside his ear, his little hand, the small forefinger up, and bid us listen. And I deem it wise to make him nature's playmate. He knows well the evening star, and once when he awoke in most distressful mood, some inward pain had made up that strange thing, an infant's dream. I hurried with him to our orchard plot, and he beholds the moon, and shushed at once, suspends his sobs, and laughs most silently, while his fair eyes that swam with undropped tears did glitter in the yellow moonbeam. Well, it is a father's tale. But if that heaven should give me life, his childhood shall grow up familiar with these songs, that with the night he may associate with joy. Once more, farewell, sweet nightingale. Once more, my friends, farewell. End of The Nightingale. Recording by Verity Kendall.